Azure Striker Gunvolt. I feel like it's one of those indie games that most people in the indie scene know about, but haven't really played. It just seems to have that general vibe about it. I kind of fell into that category for a long time. I always knew about the character and what he could do and what the series was like, but I never really tried it out for myself. Well, the original game was released on the 3DS in August of 2014, and later re-released with its sequel on the Nintendo Switch 3 years later, and this will be the version I'm playing for this video. One, because it's in proper HD and on a console, which makes it much easier to record, and two, Inticreates give me a code to check it out, so thanks guys. But the collection is also being released for the PS4 as well, so if you want to grab it there, have at it. But when talking about the history of Gunvolt, it's kind of important that we talk about the company itself. So if you've played any kind of Japanese retro revival game in the past few years, you can flip a coin and it's probably done by Inticreates, as they've grown quite a pedigree working on both Bloodstained, Master Blaster 0, 1, and 2, Mega Man 9 and 10, the list goes on. But speaking of Capcom, they were previously Capcom employees that broke away and made their own studio. They would work with various companies, but Azure Striker Gunvolt would mark the first time they self-published their own game, and Azure Striker Gunvolt took heavy inspiration from their previous Mega Man titles. It would be released on the 3DS, Steam, and the Azure Striker Combo Pack being the newest version of the game.
But I'm heading into a franchise I've never played before working on this review, so am I gonna end up liking it? Well, let's dive in and find out.
Okay, so sit down for this one. Azure Striker Gunvolt takes place in a future where there are beings known as adepts. Pretty much people with advanced powers, usually elemental based. A group known as the Sumeragi group help keep the world at peace, but in reality are experimenting on adepts to make them their own soldiers. Remember Shinra from Final Fantasy VII? They're Shinra. An organization known as Quill is seeking to expose the Sumeragi group and end them, with one of their best recruits being an adept known as Gunvolt. And right there, for the sake of the reviews, if I say Gunvolt, I'm referring to the game. If I say GV, which is the in-game nickname for him, I'm referring to the character. All good? GV is tasked with a mission to hunt down an adept known as Lumen, who can control other adepts by singing. When GV finds Lumen, he discovers that Lumen is connected to a young girl named Jewel. Like Joule, the unit of energy. She was taken captive by the Sumeragi group and forced into experiments against her will, which has Gunvolt unable to go through with his objective. This doesn't go over well with Quill, who kicked GV out, and now he works as a freelance agent while taking care of Jewel. 6 months later, he's contacted by members of Quill to go hunt down adepts for the Sumeragi group. GV accepts and heads out on his assignment. Along the way, he will run into Kopin, a man who hates adepts and carries a gun that can nullify their powers, and I mean, look at this guy. I know he's supposed to be your anime rival, but he just screams that part with the hood, his eyes always covered. I couldn't help but comment that on my first time encountering him. Other than that, it's really just fight the adepts, drama happens, invade the Sumeragi, yeah. There's a lot that this game tries to do with the world building, but I won't lie, I really wasn't able to get into the plot much. It's not that I found it bad, I just kind of felt like it was just there. I wasn't able to really get behind certain characters and such, and you predict almost every plot twist this game tries to do. If anything, I did find the bosses interesting at least. They're where I feel like the story shines through the most. Like with this one girl Elise, you find her in this dark underground base and you can see she's really timid, but there's also this haunting vibe around the area too. But when you get to the end of the stage, you find out that her adept quite literally has a split personality. And based on what happened to Jewel, this kind of is a touchy subject for GV and makes him want to take down the group even more. There's glimmers here and there, but not enough to get me that invested in the plot. Now, presentation-wise, for an early 3DS download game, I think Gunvolt looks great. The sprites are nice and fluid, there's a lot of great particle effects like the lightning and after images. One detail I love in particular is when adepts use their super moves, you get these big anime cut-ins right before the attack, which adds to their impact, and in a boss fight, lets you know that something big is coming. I do want to mention character designs really quick. While I do think some of them are pretty standard, ones like Gunvolt and the adepts I think are really damn cool, and they hit the right notes for me and are very striking. I did mention Kopon looking kind of ridiculous looking, but it's like just enough to where I love them embracing it sort of deal. Also, this guy here, Nova, I mean, come on, that guy looks like he should totally have a Millennium item around him. You see it too, right? As for the soundtrack, I sadly can't remember that much. It wasn't bad or anything, and it works for the stages just fine, but I can't really remember much of it outside of the game. The one exception is Muse's theme, which kicks in when she powers you up. It's basically a J-pop song while you're powered up. Look, call it cheesy, but it really does add to making you feel more powerful and really sticks with you. Definitely the most effective use of music in the game by far. Speaking of sound, the game does have Japanese voice acting, but no English option is available. I will say the in-game lines of them yelling out their attacks in English and such, completely over the top, and it adds a lot to the atmosphere. The one thing that I don't like is how the level dialogue is handled. A lot of the game has these still frames that show characters talking to one another, but they never really change based on emotions and such, so they get kind of stilted. Now, they will occasionally have these drawn scenes showing story bits, and these work fine. I just wish that the portraits were a bit more eye-catching. The other part that I don't like is that in levels, characters will be talking to you. You can disable this, by the way, for replays of levels and such. But they're stuck on the bottom part of the screen, and my eyes and attention are more focused on the gameplay with how fast things are moving. So it's really hard to read them in the middle of gameplay, especially during boss fights. I think something like, say, Kid Icarus Uprising was able to get away with this style much better. It also helps that that game had a full dub while Gunvolt only has a Japanese track, making it hard to appreciate them without deliberately slowing down. The script is pretty good with remarks and such, but I was only able to appreciate it when I went back into the footage or watching someone else play, not when I was playing it myself. Now, as for the collection, I do have a few nitpicks. The game transitions rather well to HD, but certain assets you can tell were made for 3DS resolution in mind. And when you scale them up, it looks really out of focus and it's kind of distracting. But one thing that wasn't distracting is the performance, and I really do want to highlight this. This game is incredibly fast-paced, bullets flying everywhere, dashing all over the place, and the game held a rock-solid 60 FPS the entire time. And not once did I ever encounter a bit of slowdown, which is impressive given some of the game's later boss fights. Any kind of performance issue would have killed this game right there, so props on to ya, Inticreates. So Gunvolt overall has a pretty great presentation, so how does the gameplay fare? So Gunvolt is a platformer action game very similar to Mega Man of sorts. You have 6 Azure Strikers you can go after in any order you want, blaze through their stage, take them out, and move on to the next one. However, unlike Mega Man, you don't really get powers for beating bosses. You do get a gun by beating them, but it's not really tied to each individual adept. Gunvolt's main form of attacking is a system called tagging. You can shoot enemies, but that alone won't do much damage. Rather, if you hit them, you place a tag on them, and depending on what gun you use, you can tag a target up to 3 times, going from blue to yellow to pink. Once you have all the tags in place, you can unleash lightning that will automatically track anything you tag and do massive lightning damage to them. You just need to watch out as your gauge will go down when you use the power, and if it goes down all the way, you will need to wait for a recharge. If you're on the ground and if you aren't in cooldown, you can double tap down to refill, and when you're not firing, Gunvolt can negate damage by using a bit of his Azure gauge. You also have these cards on the bottom that you can have up to 3, basically your super meter, which can let you perform massive AoE attacks, healing, immediate gauge refills, etc. At the end of the stage, you will be able to get money and parts that you can use to synthesize new gear for your defenses or mobility, like an air dash or multiple jumps. You can also accept missions and such by defeating a certain amount of enemies, beating a stage as fast as possible to get some upgrades as well. Obviously, dying is not encouraged. However, sometimes when you die, Muse will resurrect you on the spot and make GV incredibly powerful, refill your health, give him infinite jumps, the air dash. You can just kinda go to town at that point. You can manipulate this sort of when talking to Jewel in between missions, but it is random. The last big thing to mention are these green jewels. They're the big collectible in the game to watch out for. There's one hidden in every main stage and the mid-game stage. You will need to collect all 7 of these and give them to Jewel in order to unlock the true final boss. And that about sums up Gunvolt. So what were the things I was missing out on? So the highlights in Gunvolt, well, first off, I love the pace of the game. This game is fast and barely any breaks in it. It's just go, 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 and I love it. There's a big sense of adrenaline you get playing the game that always makes it feel fresh. It also helps that Gunvolt controls great, his dashes and jumps feel just right, and keeping that momentum is a reward on itself. Gunvolt is also the game that if you're the speedrunning type, I can totally see you getting a lot out of this game. And with the ranking system and challenges, they encourage multiple playthroughs of a level and getting good. Next, I think the levels are super fun and each feel very unique from one another and all have their own set pieces that make them stand out. Like in Merrick's second half, you need to outrun this water rising up because your electrical powers aren't gonna play nice with it, and it leads to a high-stakes chase. Joda has this large climb to the top of a skyscraper with a lot of strings. Elise has these stealth sections at the start where you can't use your powers, otherwise security will find you. They all change the stages up just enough to make them feel different and stand out, but not too gimmicky to be obnoxious. And the game is challenging for sure, but for the most part I don't really find it that cheap. You have plenty of tools at your disposal, you have infinite lives, and checkpoints are frequent, so it's only a matter of time until you get through, or you can get a little extra help. The Muse thing that I mentioned before is probably one of the coolest things in the game. And getting this on a boss fight or something, oh man, it feels incredible and such an awesome feeling to happen. But the best part of the game for me easily are the boss fights. These fights truly are a spectacle. They require a lot of pattern recognition, a good use of your supers for iframes, and I love that in their final phase they use their own super moves like you, which I always really dig it when bosses work off of the same systems you do. Some of the standouts for me were easily Merrick, who's a great first true boss and teaches you mechanics very well, with his teleporting machines and giant laser. Copen, for as much as I was making fun of him, was a super cool boss, because he uses all the powers of the bosses you fought up until the midpoint, so he actually can change depending on your playthrough, which is a really cool idea. But I think Elise is by far my favorite boss. You fight both of her personalities at the same time, which mirror each other on opposite sides of the screen. The big thing though is that if you kill one of them but not the other one, she'll pull a Street Fighter 3 Gil and do a
Resurrection!
And bring the other one back to life. So that means you need to manage both of their health bars and kill them at the same time. It's a fight I didn't really like at first, but becomes really fun on repeat. And in the final boss rush, they end up giving her 3, and that fight is just nuts. And the game is very replayable. And I'd say on the Switch it's perfect for just clearing out a few levels while you're out and about. But unfortunately, Gunvolt's first outing has a few rough spots. Sadly, I do got my problems with Gunvolt. Some prevalent throughout the game, others, well, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. For one, remember how I said you can synthesize gear to help you out? Well, you can, the problem is you're probably not going to do it much. See, after you finish a mission, based on your score, you can randomly open up a certain amount of boxes to get either money or materials needed for crafting. The problem is, all those items are random. And you get plenty of money, so that's not the issue. You'll almost always be short of materials, and it's really up to luck if you get them or not. Which sucks because some of them, like the mid-air dash and the double jump, are super helpful, and some players won't be able to get the chance to have them on a normal playthrough. There is one other way to get materials, and that's for the missions which you can sign up for when you do a level. The problem is you can only do 3 at a time, and you need to sign up for them before a mission. So even if you met the requirement, if you didn't have the mission selected, you're out of luck. And on top of that, any level-related ones don't open up until after you finish the level. Like for example, there's one where you can beat the level in under 8 minutes. If you do that on the first run, it doesn't count. So you need to replay the level again, even though you already did the challenge asked. That just felt unnecessary and padding for sure. It's probably because the game is pretty short, only about 4 hours, and besides there being an easy or hard mode, there's really not much else to do outside the main quest. Also, the first stage of the finale is pretty bland, not gonna lie, mainly because they make you take out the first boss you fought 3 separate times. I get the idea that they want to show how much stronger you are, but it's just not an interesting boss and it got tiring. But okay, let's get into more of the specific stuff. Let's talk about the green gems. So most of the time, as long as you're looking for them, you'll find them no problem. The one exception to the rule is Viper Stage, where you need to be careful about hitting these blocks in order to clear the way. Otherwise, you'll drop an immovable block onto the gem, and what do you do when that happens? You go die in the lava pit and reset it, which is dumb! No other gem has this stipulation, so why is this one so picky? And that leads into another problem. Every single one of them is required to get this necklace from Jewel that is required to get to the final boss. Kind of like Kirby Dark Matter Trilogy games, to compare it to something. But here's the catch, not only do you have to get all of them, you need to give them all to Jewel. Why is that the issue? Well, after being your final adept, she gets captured and you need to go rescue her in the final level. So you can't talk to her after getting the last gem. meaning you need to get the bad ending first to give her the last gem, get the necklace, and then fight the final boss again to get the good ending. Come on. That's just padding. I got all the gems, I did all the work, just let me get my good ending. It doesn't help that you need to sit through 7 minutes of unskippable credits. And technically, you need to sit through them twice for both the good and bad ending. And please, don't hit start and select during it. I did it trying to figure out if I could skip it, and what did it do? Send me back to the title screen, and it didn't save, so that meant I had to fight Nova and watch the ending 3 times! And man, this is not the kind of boss you want to fight more than needed. I didn't like any of the 3 final bosses. Nova Phase 1 is just you using your electricity all the time, and it's hard to keep your tag on him, not to mention the homing projectiles are used way too much in this fight. And in Phase 2, you need to tag both of his lasers and him, but you need to be low energy usage so you can dodge fast-moving ground attacks shot from the skies, and its final attack is just making a kill plane come down from the ceiling. And if you get hit by it, you need to redo both phases all over again, and it's so demoralizing. And the true final boss has a cool idea where you need to use your own power to cancel out his. He steals Copen's gun to negate your powers during the fight, but by Phase 2 and 3, god, this thing is a nightmare to avoid. And these fights just didn't leave me satisfied beating them like the others in the game. It was more of a, well, thank you, that's over kind of feeling, which just makes the ending of the game feel really flat.
And unfortunately, all these problems at the end just kinda take the game down just enough to be a little bit of a sour experience at the end. A fun experience, but not great.
Gunvolt I do think is a fun time. I really do enjoy the sense of speed of the level design and the boss fights, and if you're into series like Mega Man X or Zero, this is totally up your alley, and I think you should give it a shot. But man, do the end parts of this game with the gems, the crafting system, and the last few fights just leave a bad taste in your mouth. And since they're all right at the end, they tend to stick out a little bit more. Those do hold a great game back to just being good. Though at the same time, this is the first game in the series kind of issue, so I'm willing to be a little kinder on it for that. But overall, I do think Gunvolt is solid. I just feel like it's missing that little something to take it to the next level.
But now I'm curious for the sequel. If you just tweak a few things, I think you really have something going here. So we'll find out next time when I'll be taking a look at Azure Striker Gunvolt 2. So until then, I'll catch you later.
"少し